All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm out there hunting and grinding and trying to find stories for you, my faithful audience. Well, today we have Jordan Stephenson coming to us from Ontario. Where are you exactly in Ontario?
In Kitchener right now. Coming to you live, as it were.
All right. So we have Jordan Stephenson here. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you having me on.
So Kitchener is like a little place. It's a little place in Ontario that seems to do a lot. The Kitchener chapter for the CWB Association has consistently kicked ass for years. And I'm always impressed at how much comes out of that kind of like little university town, college town of Kitchener, Ontario. You know, how do you like living in Kitchener now?
Kitchener's been awesome, actually. So went to Conestoga College, so was already familiar with the area. And then after graduation, kind of, stuck to the area, and it's worked out good. I do actually not work in Kitchener. I actually work in Brantford at the moment. So it's a bit of a commute that way. But in terms of the area, it's beautiful. Any place near the Grand River with all the trails and everything like that is awesome for walks or bikes or anything you want to do in that area. So
it is pretty, yeah. It is pretty.
No.
Now, is that where you were born? Or are you a local or are you a trespasser?
A Kitchenery. I don't actually know what you would call them. I'm an Aurorian, I think they call it. So I'm from Aurora, which is right near Newmarket. I know people usually know Newmarket a little bit more than Aurora. But that area is also very nice. Born and raised over there. Went to high school in that area. And continued to work for a little bit until after graduation, and then kind of got that mindset of trying to figure out what you want to do. I think everyone runs into that at the end. They're like, do we do university? That's always pushed a lot, but kind of wasn't quite sure what to figure out. So took some time and eventually ended up at Conestoga College for the Welding and Robotics program. That's how I ended up in this area.
Cool. So let's go back in time because there's a couple interesting points there that I think are important to cover. The first one being, you came out of high school not really knowing what you were doing. Now, that's always a bit of a slough off to the truth of you probably had some type of dream in high school that you were like, I think I want to do that, and maybe be a hip hop star. I don't know, whatever it is. But what was it that you kind of thought you were gonna gun for coming out of school?
So actually, I came out of high school thinking Lakehead University for accounting. Accounting was one of the things I was like, I loved my spreadsheets, numbers, all that fun stuff. I also helped you. That was, this is, when you have a professor that's actually really engaged and very good with, exactly. That was one of the biggest things. So I had someone like that in high school. I was like, yeah, this seems really good. But one, university very expensive. Two, it's a big commitment as well. So at the end, you're like, okay, let's take a little bit of time. Let's take, I think I took a year to try to figure some stuff out. The other issue as well is that I was in a relationship at the time, and that's quite a bit away from Thunder Bay to Waterloo University,
right.
Which my then girlfriend, now wife, at the time was taking the architecture program at Waterloo. So took some time, and then someone mentioned, hey, I was working at Tim's. I was serving the coffee, and they're like,
which is a vital service in this country. Yeah.
Doing all that fun stuff, giving everyone their doubles, triples, some quad. You see some stuff there. That's for sure.
Gross.
Yeah.
I don't even drink milk. I don't even drink milk. So like even
75% milk.
No,
25% coffee. Why is my coffee cold? You're like, I don't know, miss. I can't tell you why.
I'm not even lactose intolerant. People are always like, oh, you don't drink milk, you're lactose intolerant. I'm like, no, I'm totally tolerant of the lactose. I can tolerate all the lactose. I just find raw milk to be gross. I don't know what it is. I think about like the hairy sack it comes out of, and I'm not really down with that. But I do love my cheese and yogurt and all the other wonderful sour creams and cottage cheese. I love milk byproducts, and I'm not slamming the milk industry. Okay, so Big Milk, don't come down on me. But but I'm not a milk drinker. So when I see people order the quadruples, and for the Americans that don't know what Tim Hortons is, it's kind of like our Dunkin' Donuts. And a quadruple is 4 sugar, 4 cream. And Tim Hortons sugar and cream, I wouldn't even say is normal sugar and cream. Like if I put 4 spoons of sugar in a coffee at home, it's not nearly as sweet as that 4 shots of sugar
when they're over there
from Tim Hortons.
There's actually buttons when you're doing all that kind of stuff too. You'll fill up the sugar, and then depending on the size. Yeah, exactly. And so when you've got to you got someone with an extra large and you put the sugar for that one, that's a different size. But yeah, no, we would have people who would go for like the quads and stuff like that. And again, I brought up the point about the cold coffee. That would happen all the time where people got that excessive amount of filler in there, like cream or milk, and they're like, "Why is it cold?" It's like, well, we keep the milk cold, so when you got the hot coffee and everything.
And I love using coffee as an example of grain migration in metallurgy. So we can come back to that later because that's
we'll circle back.
Yeah, we'll circle back because that's one of the examples I always use with my students. But all right, so you're coming out. First of all, I think it's absolutely stunning that you had a accounting teacher that hyped you on accounting. Like, I mean, I don't even know what that looks like to have an instructor get you pumped about accounting, because it doesn't seem to be like something that you get real pumped on, right?
Yeah.
Like,
what's the Leonardo DiCaprio movie? Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah,
that's
Catch
the
Me
one,
If You
right?
Can, where he's
Yes,
like
and
the secret life of everything. Yeah.
that one. So we actually watched that in class, and she goes through all the points in there. It's like, oh, like here's how he got away with the checks that he got and how he's able to fly around and all that. So yeah, that again, great way to teach. Be like, you too can be like Leonardo DiCaprio if you work hard enough. Although not quite the same, but that again, very engaged with the students, all that good stuff too. I honestly, like, if the welding stuff had not worked out, that may have been a route I would have circled back into.
Well, I guarantee you that far enough down your career, things will combine. They always tend to. I took some university, quite a bit of university when I was younger, that in retrospect, and I'm not shading it because I loved it. I took philosophy. People were always like, what are you going to do with that? But 30 years down the road, I swear that philosophical training that I got, that mental fortitude that you get studying philosophy, has been so useful to everything I've ever done. Right? Like and it's been really great. And like, I mean, things come around, things that you're like, oh, I took a course in that 10 years ago. Who cares now? You'd be amazed at how often all of a sudden you're in a situation where like, wow, I totally need that skill right now. Perfect.
Yeah. I totally feel you, and I got something about that too as well with the college. But leading to the college though, so when I was working the coffee, one of my coworkers, her husband was like, hey, like, you're trying to figure stuff out. Have you ever considered welding? Because I had mentioned like, hey, I wasn't quite sure about this whole accounting thing, about what to do. So he stopped by and he started doing his sales pitch of like why welding's cool, all that stuff, showing pictures, things he made. And, working with hands is always something pretty awesome. And again, I can't stress, like, again, in high school there was a big push for that university, so that had not even been a consideration. So it's like, oh, there's a whole path you can take here in the trades, like woodworking, welding, any other thing that you want to do, like that, plumbing,
all
electrical,
the tactile functions.
Exactly, yeah. Was not really that pushed. So I ended up taking a course in Toronto, just a 1-day course. You go down, they show you like, here's a weld machine, here's how you turn it on, here's how a helmet works, here's how welding works. We made like little houses and like other things like that. Cool. And I was like, you know what, could see this working. And so again, the Conestoga College program was very nice for that, because they offer many different jumping off points. So if you were to take the first year, everyone shares the first year. You want to go into welding and robotics, you're taking manual welding your first year. You want to do your fitting, same thing. Everyone shares that 1-year program where you learn your GMAW,
your basics,
macaw, your facaw, your ta.
Yeah. All the Oz.
Exactly. Yeah. So going into that, took the first year, met some amazing people. Again, just, very down to earth people, very fun people. People of all ages taking that program too. Was very nice. And so just that whole experience.
That's quite the jump, right? Like, you're like, I think I'm going to work with numbers in a cubicle or in my home office for the rest of my life, counting other people's numbers and dreading my own taxes. and now I'm interested in working with my hands
Mhm.
in kind of a functional labor, trade, which I think many people often forget that does have a whole science and world of other pathways. And
Mhm.
generally you just see the welder, the person that's making the arcs fly in that gig. That, how did you get from the one to the other as a possibility? Did you have it in you as a young person to you work with your hands? Were you a master Lego builder as a kid?
Oh,
Or like, I mean, were these perhaps skills you've always maybe had and repressed because you were focused on, academia or university, and you kind of already maybe had that you never, got to expose?
yeah. I would say so. That's a good point. I guess I've never really deeply thought about it, but it was one of those things. When you're going into your post secondary, there's a lot of thought of, is this going to be useful? Like, is my degree?
Mm-hmm.
And so you might look at something like an English degree, and it's like, okay, this is very interesting to me, but what kind of jobs come out of that? You might look at history degree, like any of those kind of
Yeah,
degrees. So
yeah.
um, again, one was that I had someone who interested me into accounting. I was like, okay, I can see making money at the end of this was one of those things as well. But it also is a huge commitment. Like, you're at that point, I wouldn't have been moving over to Thunder Bay, would have had to deal with all the expensive university, all that stuff. And so having an option here, again, that was the big thing for me at the time, was keeping the options open. There was, you can take this Conestoga welding program. It is a single year, and you can jump off, and you get your certificate. You know how to weld. It's one of those things that you have. And this is what it was sold to by the gentleman who was kind of introducing me to welding. He's like, hey, even if you just get into the welding, you learn how to make, like, you'll make X amount, like $22 an hour or whatever, for the rest of life. But you always have something to fall back on
Mm-hmm.
as an option there too. And there was the option as well going to this the robotics side of things, which now that you mention it there too, as a young lad, always thought robotics and automation was always pretty
Pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to from a university side of things, there's a lot of higher end stuff you can get into, but from the welding side of things, it's like, oh, like, this is a very direct, like, you learn how to manually weld, and then you learn how to make a robot move around and do those welds, for you in that case. And it was very cool. It's yeah, again, a lot of open options there as well. Conestoga also offered a inspection program as well. So
Yeah.
even if I got into it and I was like, you know what, these robot things way over my head, inspection, okay, we can go down that route.
Well, and then you're back to your
Uh,
spreadsheets.
exactly, yeah. Which actually in my current job we do quite a lot of that. So there's some parallels there too. It's funny. I ended up back in the paperwork side of things eventually, but
And what about your
yeah,
family? What about your family? Like, you're growing up in Aurora, in the Aurorian, world.
us
And
Aurorians, yeah.
yeah, and I don't know why I'm thinking of aurochs. What is that, an animal of some kind?
Or that sounds like something from like Dungeons and Dragons right
Yeah, I
there.
think it
That's
is.
yeah.
I think it is. And I do play quite a bit of Dungeons and Dragons, so I think that's what it is. But
Oh, there you
yeah.
go.
So
Okay, perfect.
anyways,
I've been enjoying Baldur's Gate 3 recently. Me and
oh,
me and
it's
my partner
fantastic.
have been getting
Tried
to that.
Divinity Sin
Oh,
2.
okay.
Yeah, fantastic game.
Good stuff.
Um what did your parents think? Like sometimes parents aren't as supportive when
Mhm.
people seem to track off university, which is one of the biases I'm working hard at the CWB to try to convince not 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds, but actually their parents at a much earlier age, because I feel like kids have already been pushed off of the trades by the time they're even 12,
Mm.
to think that that's not good for them, and that they have to go to some type of higher learning to be somebody. I'm doing parentheses if you're listening on a podcast, but or in quotes there, but
You need descriptive audio there.
yeah,
He
yeah,
he
descriptive.
moves his fingers in a quote.
Did your parents
Um,
have any of that bias? Were they like, "Hey, what are you doing? I thought you were doing accounting, and now you're gonna go get dirty with a bunch of welders," or were they pretty supportive with like, "Hey, make your choices. This is what you got to do."
Oh, I'm very blessed to have a very supportive father. He is actually a civil engineer. So he
Okay.
went to University of Queens, actually Queens University. My mother as well. She went to Queens for her teaching. And then my sister went, she actually ended up doing, she did English degree at Queens, and then also went into media as well. And so she's doing some of that stuff now. But yeah, everyone, like you're saying there, is very university focused. But again, my dad was very supportive. He's like, hey, would sit down and be like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, yeah.
Just happy to see if you get a job. And, obviously going from, I worked a lot of odd jobs. I did, when I was younger, I did daycare, I did soccer refereeing, I did, what else was in there? Retail, did some Home Depot in there. Did some of the, like we're talking about there, the Tims, all those kind of odd jobs. And it's one of those things, as my dad would have just been happy. It's like, hey, as long as you have a career trajectory, you see yourself going somewhere, I'll be happy with that. So, again, the welding kind of blindsided him too. He's like, I don't know how you ended up at this. And I was like, I just talked to people, some people were trying to hype it up. And so maybe I'm just very influential that way. Someone mentions accounting, he's like, that does sound cool. If you're just very excited and very passionate about your job or your hobby or whatever, like it does have a big influence on people.
It does catch. It does catch. I mean, I hear that a lot. People being like, your passion, where do you find this passion for welding, 30 years in, and you're still out there advocating and pushing. And it's like, I don't feel like it's even a job of mine to advocate, because welding has been good to me. Like, I mean, it's not like I was good to welding. I didn't show up and revolutionize the welding field. The welding fields revolutionized me. Like I stepped into this world and was like, wow, like all these things I can learn and do and be. And literally all I am is a conduit of that to others. You know what I mean? And I guess people like you are receptive. And I think a lot of people are receptive to, especially if you're looking for, or you're open to suggestions, right? If you're out there and you're like, I need something. What is that something? And then you hear some story about somebody doing like, this is awesome. I did this thing and I got paid really good money and now I'm going to Cuba for a month. Hey, what?
Hey.
I want those things too.
How can I get in on this? Yeah.
Yeah.
And to that point, actually, so when I was at Conestoga College doing all my programming, my program, excuse me, and eventually was there for 3 years. Ended up joining the CWBA, so the Canadian Welding Bureau Association student chapter that they have. And so that was a lot of programs that were put on there. And as well as during the summer, they would have open houses. And so at the Conestoga would go over there, and you'd have high school students or, any kind of, people who are, grade 11, that kind of stuff, or grade 12 sometimes, or even younger coming in. It's like, hey, there's a whole world here that maybe you haven't had any exposure to, because a lot of high schools can't really afford that kind of equipment, or they don't have a professor who's specialized in that or knows, how that whole industry works. That's true for everything, right? Like for electrical, for plumbing, any of that. So just opening that option to them, being like, hey, here's something, if you want to learn this, if this seems kind of cool to you, it's a skill you can learn. You can pick it up fairly quickly. Mastering it, of course, obviously learning your blueprints, learning to fit, all that kind of stuff is a whole lifetime experience there of learning. But in terms of picking it up and putting it on a bead, maybe that's something they had been exposed to, or something like, again, working with your hands or just trying that. And so seeing some people try to, pick that up and be like, this is kind of cool. I'm like, yes, especially when you get them to go home with their thing as well. Be like, go ahead and weld this together like a flower or something. It's Mother's Day. Put something together for you, for her or whatever. That can be pretty special. And so, seeing that as well. Even in my current job too, we have a lot of either co-op students. So again, high school students who are trying to get an extra credit or whatever. They'll come to Cambridge Profab, and they'll do X amount of months with us, and we'll go through and give them their temporary ticket. We'll do the testing, kind of show them, okay, here's how you set up your machine, here's how you do your welding. Here's how the test will work. This will be the next steps for you in terms of getting your full ticket and all that. That's kind of cool too. If we get them their full ticket before they leave, that can be pretty special as well. Hey,
it's useful. It's an actual cert. Like you got a qualification that's international, literally. Like,
it can be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
At least.
Now, but yeah, no. So when you talk about trying to convince young people. One of the things I try to steer away from is like the either or argument. Like you gotta either go to university or go to trade school, and you gotta pick. And I find that to be a distinction that probably is unnecessary. I know in my communications in the last couple of years, I've really tried to tailor my push to young people that just trades first, do both, but just start with the trade. Because like you said, the trades, you can get into an under 1 year program in any trade, really. And within a year, and some of them are as short as 7 weeks, you can get some certification. You can go out there and get a job with a pension and benefits at 18 years old, making double minimum wage of what anyone around you is making, or, considerably more money. And now you're financially stable already, right? And now if you want to go to university and you want to work on that master's, or you want to get that doctorate, you now have the ability to start going to university without getting yourself in debt. So do both if you want. Like, if you actually, your game plan is to go to university and become a doctor, and you're worried about student loans and money and family, only the very wealthy are going to be able to go down that path without any serious investment.
Or coming to a huge debt at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Go into a trade first, and get the finances rolling. Give it a year, and then start looking at your university career. You'll always have something to fall back on no matter what. And as we saw during COVID, the world shut down, but not the trades. Not for one day, not for 1 minute did the trades stop. Because you can't. You just can't. The services need to keep rolling. The water needs to flow. The electricity needs to run. And the bridges need to, stay upright, except for, Baltimore was not in Baltimore. But other bridges, other bridges need to stay upright.
Oh, no.
But too soon? Is that too soon?
I was going to be topical. It's okay. Someone's going to be listening to this in a couple of years, be like, wait a sec, what are they talking about? Oh, no.
But, that's the way I look at it, because I'm both. I went to university and I went to trade school, and I got incredible value from both. And I'm in the position I am now because I did do both, because there are things you learn in a classroom setting, at a desk, in university, or a college program that not only teach you great stuff about what you're learning, but also give you a lot of great insight about yourself, your ability to sit and learn, your ability to be patient and listen. These are things that you learn in an uncomfortable classroom setting, because nobody likes to sit in a classroom desk for 6 hours. Nobody does. Everyone's like, oh, my kids don't like to sit in a desk. No one likes to sit in a desk. But some of us just come to the realization that to do certain things, you have to. Right? You just have.
Yeah. That's there was definitely a number of courses that I took in the welding program, like codes. Everyone falls asleep in codes. But then you get into the industry and you're like, wow, these are okay. I'm glad I took some notes.
These are real.
Presentation. Yeah, because it can be confusing, especially we do a lot of custom fab for not just Canada, but also going to the States and overseas and all that. And everyone has different standards. So a lot we'll do CWB / CSA. So we'll do AWS. Yeah, that's the big one there. We do ASME as well for the boiler pressure
ISO
vessels and all that. Yeah, all that fun stuff. And so all of those have different tickets. They have different qualifications, certifications, procedures that you need to make. We deal a lot with TSSA with our ASME pipe vessels and all that kind of fun stuff too. So lots of paperwork there as well, spreadsheets as well. So in my current role, it's been a lot of tracking welder certifications, procedures, all that fun stuff too. It's like, hey, we're going to weld this thing together. Do we have an improved procedure for this? Do we have some special material coming in? Do we have our titanium procedure? Are people qualified for it? All that kind of fun stuff there. You don't really think about until you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of nice to, from the client's perspective as well, to have everything, all the ducks in a row and all that as well.
Yeah, and it's a time and place. Like, each knowledge piece comes in at the time it's needed, right?
Yeah.
For me, learning metallurgy was big. Like, I love metallurgy. My dad was a boilermaker. So when I got into welding, he already had all his old textbooks from way back, and some of them are in Spanish from South America. But I would go through them as a young welder and not really understand what I was looking at, and the diagrams and the heat charts and, all these things, but I was interested. So I started picking away at it over the years, and then I kind of started, learning and understanding. And finally, all of a sudden, I just fell into this world where I got it, and I understood like I could visualize atomic structures and, how things are moving and flow and migrate and how they exist and coexist based off of, positive and negative charges within the atomic structures. And it just snapped together one day. And I just fell in love with metallurgy, which I ended up being a metallurgy professor at the college for years. And what I what I loved about it, and what I say to all the young welders that are learning, because they're like, ugh, metallurgy, so boring. Ugh, why do I care? Why do I need this? And I say, I'm honest with them. Well, you kind of really don't. You don't really need it on a day-to-day basis. It's not a thing that you really need. But the day you need it, you're going to really wish you had it, because for me, metallurgy is the ultimate problem solver. If you really want to know why you got porosity, if you really want to know why that weld cracked, aside from like, oh, it was too hot, or my plate was too cold, aside from those basic things, metallurgy is the only way you're ever going to get to the bottom of that on your own without bringing in another professional, who's then you're paying them to use metallurgy to figure out what went wrong. So, you know, it's one of those things, and I always said it to my students, it's the ultimate problem solver.
And you're getting into
it. Did you like metallurgy?
I have to say, metallurgy was interesting. I'd say it was middle of the road. I really liked our robotic courses. That was probably top of the charts there. Metallurgy was interesting, like you said. They're like actually breaking down everything and being like, hey, what are the grain structures here? What is my ferrite? Like, why does that even matter versus my perlite versus my martensite? All those fun terminologies, austenitic, phases and all that good stuff in there. And then again, the codes and all that stuff too. You know, like you're saying there, when you're first learning, you're like, hey, whatever. And now you get into the work and you're like, oh, okay. So for our place as well, for the pipe side, it's like, hey, they want us to do ferrite testing. What does ferrite mean again? And so you're going back through your notes and be like, okay, it needs to be between this. They want to do chemical testing. Okay, why does that matter? Oh, okay, it's good. Yeah, you start running into all that good stuff too. We're actually just doing PMI, so positive material identification course on that stuff too. And it was coming in there with the elements as well. It's like, hey, what is really the difference between my 304 and my 316? Oh, it's my molybdenum. Okay, I do it. Okay, now you're going out there and you're scanning stuff out there too. And so, yeah, you really have to, sometimes, it just kind of hits, you're like, okay, well, you got to deep dive on something that you learned way back in the day, or you kind of dismissed. And
well, and the technology is amazing too. Like a PMI tester now is a handheld machine that you just burn, and it can, you're looking at a $20,000 machine that'll give you on the spot electroanalysis of a complete breakdown of the materials. They're wild. The first time I got to see a PMI gun was on site at a mine, and it was so interesting because they had a person kind of grinding the top, just the very light sand of the metal before they're using the PMI gun. And I was like, can't you just go right on top? And they're like, well, no, I'll show you. And then, this potash mine, the first 3 microns deep of the steel is all just saturated with potash. So it'll throw all the...
It picks up, right?
Yeah.
Or excuse me, all the cred.
Yeah.
We'll bleep that out.
Not a bad word. You're okay.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah. But, that technology, when I saw it, I remember asking, like, how much is that tool? I was like, at the time it was like 30 grand. Now I see my FabTech for like 20. That used to be like a cut a piece out and send it to some lab in like England, when I was 18 years old. Now it's like, oh, I have this thing on my holster. It looks like a gun. I just push it against this thing. It goes, and then it tells me exactly on an LCD screen what the material makeup is. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Do you guys have a cool tool like that yet?
Yes, that is exactly what we're using actually. I think it's like the S1 Titan, I think is the name. They always have like the Excalibur X76 or whatever. Always have those cool names for a very nerdy machine.
Yeah.
That's been very awesome. And so recently, exactly. We have a lot of 304 and 316 coming through. And the big difference there is the corrosion resistance. So we're just making sure, hey, if a client's asking for this, because we're a pipe shop and we have both those materials in the same location, someone isn't just grabbing a piece that looks almost identical, or identical, I should say, actually, if you were just pick up 2 pieces of 304 and 316.
Yeah, they weld basically the same too. It's very, 316 is slightly more liquidy of a puddle, but unless you're super experienced, you're not going to know.
Yeah. And so that's one of those things that we offer there too as well. Just make sure, like, hey, before we send something out, we're gonna PMI everything. Just make sure, okay, this whole thing is material it's supposed to be. And again, it might seem like a little difference between those two, but again, that's how you end up with a pipe system that one section just starts corroding on you. You're like, what happened here? It's like, oh, okay. As best as you can with the material control. Sometimes just nice to have extra insurance there too. Same with the welding wire as well. Like, maybe someone's welding 304 job and then they switch over to 316 and they don't think about switching over their wire from
that'd be a bad, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just trying to catch that.
That made my stomach sink just thinking about it. It was like, that's a big boo-boo. That'd be bad, because that's basically all garbage. You're not just grinding that out.
I know.
It's all wrecked now.
Yeah, and then it gets shipped over there and then shipped back and all that fun stuff too. No one wants to deal with it. But one of those little things you wouldn't think about, and it's very accessible these days as well. So we've been going through that recently.
Since you have access to that toy, I got a proposition for you. All right,
hit me.
I have a beef with Gillette and Schick and all the razor making companies of the world. They say that the blades are high quality stainless steel. They all do. They all say high quality stainless steel. You go to their website and you actually try to find they have a little thing materials, and they'll say we used only the highest quality grade stainless steels for our razors, blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Within a week they're rusting. Within a week they're oxidizing. They're in a plastic inset. So I actually did a couple experiments here at home where I just wet them and left them out, out. No contact with steel, not even my face, because theoretically I could have iron in my beard from working in my garage that could contaminate the blade. I get how easy it is to contaminate stainless, but they all rust. Any brand. So can you take a razor to work, take it apart? Is it too small of a sample? Can you sample on something that little and PMI it to see what kind of stainless it seems to align with? Because I want that report to send back to Gillette and being not stainless. You're going to give somebody lockjaw tetanus with these cheap quality stainless blades.
Yeah, we can give it a go. I love when it says high quality grade, and then I thought you were just going to be but what grade though?
Yeah,
304, is it 316? Is it 321?
Duplex, 2240 or something weird.
The highest of grades, Can let me make a note actually. That would be actually a fun little thing. We just so I've had my certification for a couple of years, but we just got 3 new people certified. So that's why they were in there doing some recent training, and so that might be kind of a fun little thing to put before them. Be like, hey guys, give these a go.
Maybe a couple brands, maybe one brand and another brand, and see what the differences are. I would love to see that, because I've been thinking about that. I'm a hairy dude, I shave a lot, and it's why do these things rust when they say they're stainless? They just does not. I got some stainless things in my garage that have been wet and ruined and hammered on for 30 years, and they're not oxidizing. Give me a break, guys. How is this safe?
But put them all to the test. There you go. I was just thinking about that too, actually. I was like, I can go get these. I said, oh yeah, but Gillette's always $40 or something. I'll put it down as a business.
Get the cheap 5-pack of disposables, right? Because you're gonna have to break them open anyways to get the razor out, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you've got me curious now. Actually, this will be fun. Actually, hold on.
Well, for all the listeners that are following along on this podcast, we will have to circle back on this for the results, and maybe tag them somehow to the link on the YouTube channel and on our podcast network, because this may be something that creates more questions. Or if you're out there and you have the ability to test something of your own somehow metallurgically, what is in the structure, or what kind of grade stainless are razors in your standard over-the-counter, disposable razor? Because why are they rusting? And to hashtag Gillette, hashtag Schick, hashtag razor companies, why? Why do you
really
rust?
call them out here? I'm
yeah. All right. Well, actually, this is a great time to take a break for our advertisers and sponsors. We'll be back right after here with Jordan Stephenson on the CWB Association podcast.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm here with Jordan Stephenson. We're having a great conversation about many things, from PMIs to razor blades to colleges and universities and the magical wondrousness of accounting. Well, here we are now, and we've kind of caught up to your present day, but I do want to ask you about your program at Conestoga. You know, I have had many Conestoga grads on the podcast now. It just seems like they are a powerhouse of education, and just between all the campuses of Conestoga, there's just lots of great people are coming out of the province in general. Now, explain to the people listening, what course did you take? What was it, and the pathway you took to kind of end up with the job you have now?
Sure. So I entered into the, I think actually when I originally applied, I applied for the robotic co-op section of this program. So the way the program is structured, that everyone shares the first year. So you can go into your, 1-year welding course. You can take a 2-year, custom fab course. You can take a 3-year welding and robotics. You can take a 3-year inspection, welding inspection program. But all of those share the same first year. First year is all your manual welding, where you're doing, laying down beads. You're learning how welding works. How to set up your gas, how to, set up your wire, all that fun stuff there too. Which I think is an awesome way to do it, because, coming from the robot side of things, if you don't have that foundation, it's very, when you're going into the welding industry, like that's what you need. And I found, especially in my current position as a welding robotic technician, is that any operators or anyone that we're teaching how to program, anything like that, having that foundation in welding is so important. And so the other nice thing about that program too is that you can really branch out. If you get to your second year, it's as well shared, if you're taking welding robotics, it's shared with your second year inspection students as well. So you can actually still branch there. And so when I was taking this program, it was one of those things, there's those jumping off points, or those swerving points that you can take. And I got to say that program really is awesome. Very biased, of course, but again, so many people in there, so many people with amazing, careers, as well as, they've been in there. So Jim Galloway's, at the program, he's, got lots of experience in there too. Laura, Steve, Joe, all these people, whether it's robotics or whether it's inspection, these people have been out there, they've done the job, they walk the walk, they talk the talk now, they bring you through it. And so having that real world experience, bring it back into the classroom, is very awesome. As well as very practical. Like, they have a whole lab in the back there too, where you can just play around things. You're like, hey, what does welding without gas do? What does welding with 100% argon do? Not good, by the way, not good. But they'll take you through those, which I found the coolest thing actually was just messing around too. Was just saying like, hey, let's bring up 100% argon. Let's do 75% argon, 25% CO2, and you just start messing with that. What's 50-50? What's 25-75? Why are the current standards the way that they are? And you can actually really see that. And again, just having that experience and then bring that into a workplace is very, at least I found, very beneficial. Like, you can go in there and someone might ask that too. It's like, why does it work like this? Like, why does, when I turn up my wire feed speed, why does my amperage go up? It's like, oh, because it's trying to compensate as, it needs to burn off more wire and trying to bring it all that, trying to consolidate all that, that knowledge that you learned over there. And you're like, oh, okay, they actually explained it in like a very practical way there too. So, yeah, I'd say.
And then by your third year, are you kind of like full-time robotics, because that's kind of where you want it to be? Or, or you just kind of put it all together, and when you graduate, it's like, all right, time to find work in this field?
I'd say that by the time you reach your third year, fairly a lot of, you learn a little bit of inspection, even in your second year, even if you're taking the robotic side. You learn some, all that kind of good stuff too. You're not specialized that way. So for myself, when I was, finishing up there, I went into Skyjack as a manufacturing engineer, and that was more of a supportive role. So I was supporting a line of robotics that they were setting up. It was like a 7-robot line where they'd, pick up if you ever looked at those scissor lifts that they have at a lot of construction sites, or if they're putting up building, everything that goes up and down, they want to automate that whole line. And so supporting that, not even just through, I wasn't even doing the programming of that. It was more of like hey, can you do a cut and etch to see if, it's actually, like the welds that this robot is doing has been, is actually good. And that's something you learned, even though you took the robot program. It was like, okay, yeah, I can cut that open. I can make a report that says, hey, here's your penetration. Here's, where the issue is. Maybe you didn't get down to the root here. you have those skills, which is quite good, but you also don't have a whole lot of other skills
Yeah, yeah,
that you can only really learn in the workplace. That you wouldn't really think about when you can only learn so much in school, and it's about then
yeah.
jumping into it. So learned quite a bit there. Learned a ton at my current location as well, with Cambridge
So
Profab, and
how long were you at Skyjack?
I was there for, I want to say, about 7 months or so.
It's quite
Uh,
a few people I know have kind of gone through there. They seem to hire a lot.
yes, yeah, there was
Yeah.
unfortunately when I was there was some layoffs.
Oh, bummer.
Quite a few people too. It was too bad. We're having some difficulty getting that line up and some other issues there as well. So didn't end up staying there for too long. But then and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, okay, now things are really up in the air.
And from there, you ended up going to where you are now at Cambridge Profab.
Yes, Cambridge Profab was good too because they were, I'm welding and robotic technician now, but at the time it was just a robot technician. Just because they were looking for someone to get this robot up and running. They have a 72-foot long track with a robot in the middle and a gantry that moves back and forth. And so the thought process there was like they have a lot of custom fab. Can we get the robot to do some of this? And so especially during the pandemic, it's like I'm just going to be in the corner here working on a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Was very valuable at the time, so got hired on to work on that and get that line up and running, which was difficult, honestly. Like we were talking about there, we learned robotics in school, but then there's like, hey, now instead of just like a little 10-foot by 10-foot cell, you have this monster of a cell here with this robot that's moving back and forth, and
Yeah, multiple fixtures and setups, and
yeah, it can be quite daunting there too. So as well as just the sheer amount of programming that you'd have to do with that too, as well as offline programming. So instead of like sitting there with your teach pen and moving the robot around, now you're in a virtual cell. So we use Octobuzz, and so now you've got to learn. Now you're bringing your CAD skills in, so your AutoCAD, your SolidWorks, all those fun other things that you may have just been experienced, like taught
touched
but
on,
not
yeah,
applied
yeah.
to, in a work setting. So that was quite nice. So once the robot was starting to get working fairly well, they then ran into like, hey, we have some procedures that need to get done. Would you be, you're a welding guy and you're here. I was like, okay,
You went to school.
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
yeah.
we can take a look. So start digging through the notes, like how does a procedure actually get qualified? What's the whole process for that? We have a retained weld engineer, so working with our retained weld engineer there is
Yeah.
Jack Olson. So working with that gentleman and learning a lot about that process. And then the same thing happened with our pipe shop. They're like, hey, pipe shop, we need people qualified and procedures. Can you do that? And so that, I think, once you start, being with a company for long enough, you start absorbing other roles. And so
Yeah.
with
And those are the type of jobs that are wonderful for your career because you learn so much. And I cut my teeth in a hydraulic shop building cylinders, so which is not a lot of welding. It's a lot of hydraulic work and machining work and millwright, and so I forever love that I cut my teeth there because I'm like, I had this thought I'm gonna weld, and it's like, actually I don't really weld that much, but I'm sure doing a lot of cool stuff.
Pretty cool. As well as if you're there long enough as well, you might run into, people retiring, like in our industry, especially. Like there's so much experience and knowledge. And unfortunately, as people get older, they retire, you can lose a lot of that. So they're often looking to like pass that along. And so if you get a good mentor, you get somewhere that has a good vibe, yeah, that can be an awesome opportunity. So for there as well, learned how to being a CWB supervisor as well. So getting people their temporary qualifications, so actually giving them the tests, booking those qualification sessions, putting the test pieces together, learning how that whole process works, and how like from a welding side of things, you're just in there, you do your test, you get your certification, awesome. And then the background of that too, and how all that is managed is pretty cool if you're interested.
No, that sounds awesome. Yeah. Now, here's kind of a loaded question, but since you're in the field of robotics and automation, it just came up again in my usual Instagram conversations I have with the people out in the welding world. Is like, why would I support me, Max, support automation and robotics, and if it's ultimately just going to take work away from welders? Now, I wholeheartedly don't agree with that statement. statistically and factually, over the last 30 years of my career, I've been reading reports and I've been very plugged into the industry. It's been proven that automation actually increases the amount of workforce in said companies. That aside, there is a transition of labor that occurs from the welder to perhaps a welding robot operator, or, someone who was just in a cell working all day building one part. That now is the spot where automation is looking to replace. Now, does that mean that that person lost their job? Yes. Did that person lose their career? No. There's a distinction there. And I always make like the horse and cart analogy, like Henry Ford was brutal on the horse and cart industry, right? Like the invention of the first car probably had the horseshoe makers all sweating, being like, well, now what? Everyone's going to be buying these damn cars. What's going to happen to us? Well, it's over. Like, I mean, not everything lasts. Not every job lasts forever. Industry dictates, society dictates the work that's required. And, like I could be still a candle maker in my house, but could I do the type of living a candle maker did 300 years ago? Absolutely not. Now it's a niche thing that I sell on Etsy to make $400 extra a month, not feeding my family, right? So for you, like, since you're in this world, what are your thoughts, if someone were to come up to you and say, why would you support this, or where do you see this going since, the robots are taking over?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have to say, I've heard this quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear it a lot, yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm with you there. I don't quite agree with it. Simply because there's so much that robotics can't do. Having been on this side and see what the robot's doing, like there's so many things like, man, I can't do that, or like might be asked like, hey, can you weld this? And there's just a lot of, like, especially from the fitting side of things, like if you're a fitter, or if you have many different skills that way, like there's so much that robotics will never replace, or at least not for a very, very long time that I can see. The perfect example is that our current project are all these boxes. So we have 70, they're in total 70 feet, and each panel is 35 feet. And they have all these pockets that you need to stitch weld, and each side has about 11 welds. So you have 11. Let me just do this real quick. I'm pretty sure it's 11 by 11. So yeah, each pocket has, that'd be 44 on each pocket, and then each pocket
88 for each side.
Yeah.
Oh,
so if
if
you want to sit there,
480, yeah.
if you want to sit there for these panels and do 264 stitch welds, like that's on you. But the more interesting side of it is that once all those are in, they have to put them bars on and then make a box out of it. So they have to pick it up and make these huge panels have to be put together into a box. And so currently on our project, we automate the stitch side of things, and then fitters will come in and then actually make those boxes, or they'll put all the little extra welds that need to go on there. And when we started introducing this automation to it, we got our operators are the same people who were working on those boxes. So again, if you're someone who's interested in learning more things, that was we had a gentleman there who was like, hey, do you mind if I get involved with this? We said, yeah, of course. We're looking for people who are interested in both the welding side and the automation side. So he learned how to operate it. He learned how to move it around, restart it, all that good stuff there. And it's just a good opportunity, because then you press play and it's going in the background, and then that welder is then working on other stuff in the background too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is huge. It's a tool. It's a you really can't just have like a robot guy come in and do that. You really need someone who has gone through the welding side of things as well. And so especially for our industry, trying to find people who are interested in both those can be tough. But if you're willing to learn that kind of stuff, it can be really rewarding. And also I did MIG production welding. After my first year, I did night shift at a production plant in my hometown, and the whole time I was doing there, I was like, man, you could really automate this. Like a little piece comes in, you weld it, go to the next one, a little piece comes in, you weld it. And it's like, if someone's worried about losing that job, I mean, maybe if you like putting headphones in and just going like mindlessly, but I think after a while you'd start to lose your mind. But the more interesting side of things, again, the things that require a lot of thought, and like putting like your blueprint reading skills, your fitting skills, all that kind of stuff, automation isn't going to touch that. You're A-okay.
Yeah, I just saw a quote yesterday about AI, saying that what is everyone so afraid of? AI will never will never replace genius. AI is only focused on mediocrity because it's really just an aggregate of what's already been created. AI has no independent thought. It is completely just a wholesale introduction of everything that has ever existed, reformatted in a different way. But true creativity and true ingenuity is not something computers may ever be able to do, because they don't understand chaos. Our human brains have chaos in them, and chaos is unique. It's a unique thing that we can do, that we can pull something that seemingly out of nothing, without any reference necessarily. And we can dream of unicorns and dragons and things that don't exist and never have, but we can still dream them up, without a context, and that's something that doesn't exist. So when I read that quote, I thought about that in terms of welding. And I thought, yes, now it's the people that are in the mediocrity business that feel endangered. And that's fair, because I don't think that that's necessarily of any less value. The people that do those one-off welds, or that are building tables or window bars or all these things that we use in society, gates and fences, that seem to be like prime automation, places. Yes, those jobs are probably the ones that are at risk of being replaced. And yes, that is scary for the people that do those industries. And they're probably the ones the most vocal about, what's happening with automation. But hopefully what we can do, the CWB champions, people like yourself, people out there, is just let people know that it's just a transition, as all transitions go in the world. It just, you're going to just have to transition from what you do now. You have the skills, have confidence in your skills, and you will likely be, it's a 6-week course on running the pendant for the robot that's going to come in here. And now you're going to be a highly skilled, trained worker doing the same job you did before for more pay and less effort. Yeah. But it just takes that scary transition period. That's it. And it'll be okay, right?
Yeah. And bringing exactly what you said there in terms of teaching people already doing it, that is 100% key, especially after the robot's done. Like, someone needs to go in there, look at the weld, say, hey, why are my legs uneven? Like, oh, okay, why? Like, is this a good weld? Like, why am I getting blow through on this? Like, you need those people who are experienced with welding to go in there and operate that. Like, it's not like the robot just does everything, or it's not like the robot's taking over. It's that it's helping you there, because then you got more time to do the more interesting things. I brought up the stitches earlier specifically because that's all of those stitches that they would have had to do were on their hands and knees, like going through, like, okay, here's a stitch, here's 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, like all
and
that
laying
stuff.
them out with a tape measure, marking them out, doing the welds, filling the craters. Like, I mean, doing stitch welds on the floor. I mean, I did it lots. Not the greatest.
How's your back doing? Yeah.
Well, my shoulder, my knees, and my back were really in bad shape by my mid-30s, and then I kind of decided to get off the floor and into the office. So, and now I just got fat. So, I mean, that's also a byproduct.
Hey, with you there. Like, you hit a point and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, uh-oh. All right, well, that's good, because, I'm glad that I'm not way off when I look at automation. I love going to tech shows and seeing the new cool stuff that's available. Like, I think, I used to be a business owner, and, you'd have to spend, a couple $100,000 on a piece of equipment to do one thing. Now you can go out and get some amazing equipment for 20 grand, 30 grand that will do so many things that I'm just like, it, to me, it's like technology is facilitating the ability for welders to be more, do more with less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited. We got CanWeld coming up, right? So that'll be I'm excited for that.
June 12th and 13th, in Toronto. You gonna be there?
I'm hoping so. I gotta talk with work. I'm hoping to make it a business thing instead of just taking time off. Yeah. But
the Kitchener chapter is going to be there giving their report too for the NAC on the 11th.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Unfortunately, couldn't make it last year. Had some work stuff come up there too. Sometimes it's just, unfortunately, the stars don't align. But hoping to make it out this year. And like you said, there's so much different technology out there. For a while there, we were looking into more automation in our plant, and cobots came up, which I thought were a very interesting. Way of doing things, where you actually, instead of being on a pennant moving the robot around, you have to think your XYZ. Or you're in tool mode, how you're moving the robot around. It's like, oh, you just physically grab it and move it where you want to
Yeah,
go.
press start, press finish, and then hit go.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, man, just taking those barriers away from, because when we were trying to find operators for the robot too, we were trying to find someone for nights. A lot of the time they're like, oh, it's way too much for me, automate, like I'm not smart enough. It's like, no, man, it's like, this is like, one, you don't put yourself down that way. And two, it's again, just trying to get those barriers down for people to not be so intimidated by it and see like, oh, this isn't so bad, or like, oh, I can do this too. And learning new skills, all that good stuff there too. So yeah, I'll be excited. I'm excited what they have out there.
I had a teacher once tell me about, we were talking about technology in classes in high school, and he said, technology is a choice. Technology is a choice, and you can choose to go with it or you can choose to not to. He's like, think about your remote for your TV. And I was like, okay. He's like, every time a new bigger TV comes out, you're there to buy one. Look at Black Friday or, Boxing Day sales. Every year or every couple years, everyone's going to go out and buy the newer, bigger TV. How often do you hear someone say, I'm not going to buy that TV because the remote changed? Nobody cares. If you're willing to want something, you will accept the need to learn the technology behind it. You will accept that this remote's different than the last one you had. You'll learn the buttons and you'll figure it out because you want to use it. If you approach all the pieces of technology like that in your life, you will learn, you will pick it up, and you'll figure it out because it's just about want. That's all it is. If you put up the barrier in your head being like, I don't want to do that, then you won't. You just won't, right?
I can see that. Yeah. You put those own mental barriers up in there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the chapter. We're getting close to the end of the interview here, and that's something I wanted to touch on because, of course, I work for the mothership, in the national office for the association, and you're a volunteer with the Kitchener chapter. So, why volunteer? Why be a part of this? Why take time out of your days to volunteer for the local CWB Association Kitchener chapter?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely branches from time at Conestoga College. Like, so many amazing people. Like any chapter you join, it's whether it's a student chapter, whether it's your local chapter. One, it's just a good way to meet like-minded people. You're like, hey, I'm maybe in your job you see the same coworkers all the time. You work with them, all that good stuff too. It's nice to see other perspectives though, and to see other people from different parts of the industry and get to talk to them too. That's one of the main parts of the chapter too, as well as I felt very blessed having been exposed to the good side of welding, like people putting on events and all this kind of stuff too. It's kind of nice to think that you're giving back in some way, or like you're helping to promote the industry that way too, because there are a lot of people out there that don't have that exposure to welding, and so trying to put events together or support that. Like right now, I know Kitchener chapter is trying to find high schools that will take donations, or whether it's weld helmets, weld metal, consumables, any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, and finding sponsors,
which we have
for
a grant
too.
for. So for people listening across Canada,
there you
if
go.
you're a high school or a tech program and you're looking to get some help, your local chapter has a program built in that can help you get to your ends.
And the biggest thing of that, exactly, like Zach, good thing you did the shout out there, because that's the thing, just trying to connect with those schools and get that those contacts there, and someone who's interested in that school. That's the biggest thing too, is just having like, we're going back to the beginning here, someone who's passionate about it, or someone, if your school has someone who is interested but maybe can't get the funds, and so being able to get them that with resources that they need to teach these skills that your students might otherwise not be exposed to. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest draws, as well as putting on events as well. I know Jim Galloway will do some presentations. There was a recent one that we did on what was it, additive manufacturing. So that would be like 3D printing but with welding, which is actually pretty awesome. All those cool things in the industry. So yeah, I'd say.
And what about for you personally? Like, how do you feel it's benefited you to be a part of the chapter or chapters?
Just trying to keep in contact with people as well. Like, again, it's one of those things, every month you meet up and you're like, hey, how's it going? Seeing how other people are doing in the industry there too, as well, just being more aware of the events that are out there as well, instead of learning about it on, Instagram or, anywhere you get your, like LinkedIn, any of your social media stuff there too. It's like, oh, okay, here's where those decisions are actually made. Here's where we get to hear about it. And we'll often discuss other chapters as well. Like maybe they might be putting an event on, or we're trying to figure out a collab or something like that. Yeah, just kind of that way too as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And,
nice.
I very much appreciate the volunteers across Canada that, set time aside to support the industry. And it is a give and take. I do get asked, like, why would anyone spend time? Like, they're already working, they're already making money. Why would they volunteer to be a part of this? And it's like, well, there's a certain sense of self-preservation that the welding industry has always had that I feel like maybe other trades don't, that hurts them and helps us, because there's been an understanding. Well, the association's over 100 years old, 103, I think, this year. And the whole concept mandate behind it from day one is that if we're not working to make sure there's more welders coming, we put our own jobs at jeopardy, because the industry needs to propagate itself. And the trades have always been kind of undermined by mainstream, thought leadership that, university is the way to go. These clean desk, white collar jobs is the way to go. So with that bias, it's kind of always been around. The welding industry very early on decided to be like, we need to protect ourselves. We need to somehow invest in our own pathways, our own welders, our own next generation. And I think that that's also important, because if you want your own job to be secure and successful for the next 50 years, you do kind of have to care about what's coming down the pipeline. You do kind of have to care about what's coming up and how many students there are. Because if there isn't a lot of students coming out of the program to fill the jobs, then those jobs will get shut down, and those jobs will get lost, and those companies will go broke. And it does filter and trickle down the system. So I think that, the welding community is very unique, because we have these professional associations around the world. We have AWS, we have CWB, we have IIW, we have these these wonderful programs, and you don't see that for electricians or plumbers or carpenters or like it's actually quite impressive that somehow welding has captured that space.
I gotta say, like you're saying there too, trying to branch out and get more people involved with this. Like you said there, like, where's it going to look like in 50 years? And I gotta say, part of that is also I've been very impressed with events like Women in Welding. Getting the other 50% of the population more involved with the trades is a huge part of that as well. Part of the chapter here too. There's been Daniela and Jackie. These people are very passionate about it, and I think that shows that when you get these passionate people in the industry, they start bringing more people in. I was mentioning that the Women in Welding Day, there's some of that at Conestoga College putting that on. I've noticed even in our workplace, there's a lot more, looks like women like getting into the industry that way as well. A lot more of a percentage of welders are starting to go that way. And that's just good to see. Like, and I love to support that as well with that going on. Both from the high school things and just trying to get more people knowing about these different events that are going on and different ways of entering, and that this is an option. Like it's always good just to know that the option's out there. And that's pretty awesome to see.
Like targeting wise, women, newcomers, people with disabilities, people coming out of correction services. Like, we need everyone on deck. Like exactly, it's like literally
a lot of hiring blitzes.
Yeah. Like there's so much work available. I'm talking like decades long projects. You look at the EV plants in Ontario, you look at the new mines going up in Saskatchewan, the new refineries going up in Alberta, the new pipelines and ocean bearing shipyards coming up in Vancouver, Irving in the East Coast expanding into their fuel production. I mean, it's the amount of work in Canada is insane right now. That I don't even understand how people are complaining about our economic structure right now. We are set for decades. What we do need is labor. That's what we need. So, for the messages out there, if you got young kids, start pushing them towards a trade. And it's like, if you're worried about the danger, well, there's lots of stuff in those trades that's not in the danger spectrum. There is stuff in the danger spectrum, and that's fine. There's going to always be a section of the population that loves the risk work. And that's cool. I did the risk work for a while. I didn't do it for very long because it is risky, but you sure make a lot of money doing those jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't want that, that's fine. That shouldn't be a turn off of the trade. There's other opportunities that will fit your lifestyle and I guess, risk tolerance.
hmm And even outside of those, like again, I find our shop is very safe that way, very health conscious. It's gonna be anything like that if you get into an industry is like whether it's electrical, plumbing, all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff there too is like you get in there and a risk assessment. Go to a you go in there, can talk to the people, see how they're feeling, all that kind of stuff there too. But it's always an option. Like we were talking
Yeah.
about before. It's like, hey, you learn the skill and you have it for life. And you come back to it. We've had some people who were we'll have it in the record, like their weld number will be, our current numbers are at like 900 and something. Like your welder, it's 972. And then we have someone come in who's like, hi, I'm welder 300 and something. And because they were there like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And they get their whole story about how they went and did like trucking or something, or they did
Where
some other industry. So, it's always something you can fall back on, and it's always a skill that you'll have. So,
I'm just looking at one of my.
oh, you're looking at some of your.
Yeah, because I have a blue. I got my blue seal, and I believe I was number 11 in Saskatchewan for my blue seal.
Oh, there you go.
It was.
Oh, you could have been. I'm top 10 actually.
Yeah, close, man, close. But
that's awesome. Good.
But no, it's just old. That's all it is. But what's in the future? Let's get to the end of the show here, and Jordan, what do you see for your future? Like, you're a young person. You've already made some good moves. You're on. You're in the world. You got the job, and you're working with the chapter. You're doing all the right things. So where do you see yourself going? Kind of what's the end game?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point there too. There's a lot of branching paths there, which you wouldn't expect from a welding career there. But could continue on down the automation side of things. Continue adding more automation to our plant, or go to a different location that might focus a little bit more on automation. More recently has been a lot more on the management side of things. So like tracking our welder numbers, our number of welders, what their certifications are, what our procedures are. What I find interesting is whenever we get, because we do a lot of custom fab, is we'll get new material in. Like, hey, we need to do like 11 CRCB is one of the current things we're getting into. It's
Chromium
like this,
boron.
yeah, and it's one of those materials like we don't have a procedure for this. What does this look into? Okay, we need to do some Sharpie tests on this. Like our client asked for all this extra testing on it, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that's more of a project management or
you get some
inspection side of
beautiful
things.
colors out of that material.
There you go. Yeah, we were trying. We were running some issues, especially at the start. They wanted an eighth of an inch weld on there, and everyone's doing it manually. So of course they're all like 3/16 because it's you really got to zoom when you're trying to do the small welds with a wire process like that, unless you're doing TIG or something. But yeah, so sending that stuff out for testing. We have other clients that want chemical testing, all that stuff too. So that's what I'm getting exposed to at the moment is a lot
fun.
more of the So that's what I find interesting in the moment. But who knows, in the future it might be more project management. Like, hey, okay, you've learned all these things. You've been here long enough. Maybe you want to, maybe I'll end up in a project management. Like, hey, these are your babies. You're taking care of them. Like you're responsible for them start to finish, making sure all this. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy with learning all these different procedure development stuff. And yeah, we'll see where it goes.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's great. You got the world in front of you, and you seem pretty open to kind of whatever comes down your path. So I'm sure you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with Cambridge Profab is that they have it's a smaller. I wouldn't say like a super small company, but you're not drone number 76 who's responsible for this little portion of the thing. It's like if you have an interest, you're able to kind of branch out from there, which I've been find very valuable.
Good. Well, I hope to give you a raise because you've been speaking very highly about about your shop there. So hopefully your boss listens in and says, "Oh, Jordan, just for that, we're giving you 1% profit share."
I might send him that. We'll see. You might have me back in 2 years and be like, "Man, let me tell you my awful experience." But no, honestly, it's just I've had a really good experience that way. In the welding industry, people might have a thought that it's a lot of gruff people or that kind of perception, but honestly just a bunch of great people. I've worked with some pretty great people, down to earth people, and it's enjoyable, so I gotta say.
Good. Well, for the last question, let's wrap it up as I do so many. For some advice, I want some wise words, some sage wisdom to come out of you. So, what type of advice would you give, perhaps someone in the same position as you, coming out of high school, unsure, kind of looking at university, but not sold on it yet. what would be some advice to them in terms of perhaps looking over to this side of the fence?
I'd say I found it very valuable to take that extra year. There's quite there can be some pressure, especially depending on your home situation or your family or whatnot, what their expectations are. But to go, directly from, you spent, what would it be, 17 years doing all your schooling and all that good stuff too. You finish high school and then immediately jumping into another, 4 to 5 years or plus of additional education. Just taking some time, really seeing what kind of options are out there. If you're super passionate about something, all power to someone if they want to jump right into it. But taking that time to explore and see what other options are out there is definitely awesome. There's quite a lot of, if you're interested in the trades, there's quite a lot of, I found the course in Toronto to be useful, where it was just a single day of going down and trying it, before diving into this kind of thing. Maybe you can find something that's similar with like, plumbing or electrical, or there might be those kinds of, opportunities out there where you can just go try this, or woodworking. I know there's a lot of, there was a makerspace in Aurora where you could go down, and that makerspace had a whole woodworking section down there. They had a CNC cutter that, if you ask their questions, or people there that might put on certain training courses for you. You can actually learn those things and see, hey, is this something you're interested in? Or you might go out there and be like, no, this is not for me. No, thank you. But just keeping your options open is definitely something I was happy that I got to experience back in the day, and would be anytime we have someone who's a co-op student in welding. It's one of those things, like I'll tell them like, hey, if you're enjoying this is something you'll have. If it's not really your thing, it's always something you'll have to come back to. You kind of fall back on. So
awesome. Well, no, it's great advice, and it's about options, right? Keep your options open. Don't burn any bridges. Kind of the basic rules. Be a decent human being. Like
you have a long life ahead of you. Exactly.
Yeah, and there's no rush. I mean, I remember being young, and there's a very hard sense of impending doom coming out of high school to do something, to be something. And man, now I'm sitting here on the, I'm hitting on the sunrise of 50 soon, and man, you got nothing but time. I've changed my career like 3 times, and there was plenty of time for all of it. And I probably could still change another career and still be fine. Like, there's no rush. And if you do something for a while, again, you don't have to stay there. If you're not happy, bounce. Do it. There's work everywhere. Just find your niche and stick it out, right?
That was the advice my dad gave me when I was younger. I did the reffing, I did the retail, did the coffee. It's a lot of things that you are exposed to that you realize you don't want to do.
I worked at Dairy Queen for I think a solid 3 weeks before I got fired, and it was like, I am not cut out for the service sector. And now I'm on a microphone, which I don't know how that happened, but at 15 years of age, I was not good with customer service. So
you got the voice for it. There you go. That's half the battle.
All right, Jordan. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Is there any shout outs you'd like to send out to anybody, or hellos?
Shout outs, I'd say just to the Kitchener chapter. If you're in the Kitchener area, Waterloo area, just reach out to your local chapter. If you're not in that Toronto chapter, just look into it. If you go to the CWB website association, it'll list all the chapter locations, and just reach out, just send an email. And getting involved, is just reaching out and seeing what's going on, what events are there. Sometimes the time commitments don't quite work out. People have kids, they have a bunch of other things going on in their life. They work tons of hours. But even just knowing the events and maybe coming out to one or two, or knowing that they're available is huge. Obviously our local chapter, I'll make a shout out to CWB Kitchener chapter with Jackie. Previously Daniela was the head of that. Jackie's taken the helm now. Just really, really awesome and passionate people in there. So
Jackie's awesome. And Daniela's awesome. Well, Daniela works for me, so
there you
go. We're good.
Hey, you can send that to her too. Like, hey, boss.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, Jordan, for taking the time today. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And for all the people that have been following along with the podcast, thanks so much for making us the success that we are. We got lots coming up this summer and into the new year already. We're going to be at FabTech in Canada. We're going to be at FabTech in the U.S. We're looking at what other shows we're going to be stopping in. We're always looking for more people for the podcast. We're always looking for new avenues to connect and to network. The chapter in South America and Chile's kicking butt right now. So if there's any Latin speakers or Spanish speakers out there, we do have a Spanish speaking chapter now and we're looking to, maybe expand into the Middle East in the upcoming year, which is a little bit exciting to see what's going out in that part of the world. So it never stops here. We're always trying to do what's right for you, our membership, and keep listening to the podcast and stay tuned for the next episode.
We hope you enjoy the show.